Welcome to this week's episode of the Courageous Leaders Changing the World podcast. Super excited to have this week's guest with us. Luckily in Australia for once, which is great.
By popular demand.
That's it. I would love to just basically get straight into it for this. I'd love to know what's been an experience in your life where you've had to call on every piece of courage to be able to bring that into your leadership.
I'm feeling the story I could tell, and I'm feeling the story that I will tell. And
It's always that dance.
yeah, it's interesting because it's like, I think the decision to travel the world with my family and to run the business, inclusive of 6 retreats in a year, and travel over the world doing grid work with my family, like that's probably the most courageous thing. When I zoom back out, I'm like, wow, that's not a small thing to do. And with a 6-month-old, 5-month-old when it started, and it went on for all the way up until basically July, or even really September this year. So that was the biggest thing I think that I've summoned all parts of me, and I can just remember the moments of having way too much luggage and making sure that the baby has everything it needs, Zaya, and, holding a bag here, pulling 3 suitcases like this with something on my back and something on my head, and I'm walking through the airport, to make it happen. And yeah, just the adaptability of the nervous system to handle the pressure of that, then checking in and then paying for extra baggage, and then this goes wrong and the flight gets cancelled and you got a baby, and then you get to the venue, or get to the city you're flying to, and you haven't booked the hotel yet, and you've got this thing happening, and this happens in the business, and then that's happening, and then you've got all of these things happening simultaneously, and yet it always works. I don't know how. It just does.
How do we cultivate that level of groundedness, especially when there's so many different threads pulling in us in all these different directions?
First thing's the decision. Second thing is bolstering your nervous system by meeting and tracking and building a relationship with feeling the nuances so they don't control you. It's understanding what is moving through you and what the invitation is off the back of what's moving through you, because there's these little micro choice points. Everyone always talks about choosing love over fear, but if you bring it down to its slightly more nuanced standpoint, it's like it's every little micro feeling inside of you of the decisions you make internally that lead you to an experience, kind of like the butterfly effect. Instead of seeing it as like a physical action in the world, it's more so actually feeling as an internal experience. So all those moments where you choose to distract or to not feel, it's breathing in and opening that up every single time. I sometimes think I'm going a little bit crazy with the amount of how much I actually feel, because I sit there and I'll like if I get sick, right? If I get whatever it is, coming out of doing a month worth of Unifier and Omnifire, I got a fever for 24 hours after doing the biggest portal collapse, which I'll share more about later, I've ever done, and I had a fever. And even in the midst of that fever, in the midst of feeling like I had almost no energy, no vitality, it was so hard to process and run emotions through my body, I'm still like, and I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna feel every fucking sensation, and that's a big decision to make when you're sick, because you're already feeling, out of coherence, you're feeling dismantled, you're feeling, perhaps in my case in that moment, I was feeling weak, and the desire to meet the shame, the guilt, in the case of the specifics on that particular moment, it was a lot of the feeling of murder and running that energy through my body, which will make sense later on when I share more. The willingness to process everything that life gives you, everything. And I always get fascinated by we have these kind of Instagram versions of things, and then we have these real world versions, in real life, where it's and I always distinguish this, and it's really funny because it triggers some people, and it triggered me when I first said it to myself. I'm you kind of have the Instagram priestess, and then you have the ordained priestess. You have the Instagram shaman, and then you have the deeply initiated shaman, And, there's these flavors that go into the world of regulating your nervous system, feeling your emotions, heal to feel. And then what that actually means as a real invitation from life is it is what it says it is. You have to heal to feel, but it's the willingness to fully feel and track and be with and sit in the discomfort, even when you're in a business meeting or on a podcast or with a client, and some of your stuff comes up when you're facilitating them, and the ability to keep facilitating them with precision and clarity and Integrity is your ability to keep moving through what's present for you. Because everyone's a mirror. It's like you can't run from it. You can't be like, oh, I'm perfectly healed now, I'm going to heal everybody else. It doesn't work. I think many of us have tried that. So yeah, I always feel the essence of like bringing things into like the deepest subterranean layers of like taking the thought concept and going, what does it look like if I do that at 100%? If I make it so real, so tangible that I actually do meet every single nuance, which sounds impossible. And I'm sure many new agers would be like, oh, you'll never be done, you never this, you never whatever, all the things. And I'm just like, yeah, and also I'm going to give it a red hot crack. The reason why I feel that's been a fascination of mine and the result, I suppose, that I'm seeing is that I've been able to overcome a lot of ailments that you're not supposed to be able to heal. Complex PTSD, panic disorder, depression, suicidal, porn. Those ones obviously you are meant to be able to heal. Food intolerances, like all the food intolerances, and this list keeps going on and on and on and on. And they said to me, you can't heal from complex PTSD. And I'm like, I did it. Ta-da! Right? But it all comes back to the same thing. It's like, are we willing to really receive it as an initiation? Like, this is here. I am there. And it's not who I am, but it's where I'm currently at. And can I fully drink in the initiation that life's giving me? Because I think sometimes, and I can speak to myself in this, there's the moments where we do it at 40% and 50% and 60%, and we kind of do it, and because we've done this thing a few times, we kind of let ourselves get away with a few things, and then you realize all the nuances when you sit in a deep ceremony. You're like, whoa, shit! Medicine says otherwise. Right? So like a big medicine, journey mushrooms or ayahuasca or peyote or something like that. It's like, cool. Yeah, no, that wasn't at 100%, that was at 40%. Great. So having things that are exogenous to you, that have accountability, that are not necessarily even a human, because I think a really healthy orientation for us as leaders is not to compare ourselves to anyone, but compared to one thing that I've taken on, which is a belief, but it's also probably helpful in some ways, is my standard for what great is or exceptional is or being world class is or being in integrity is or being loving is so far out there that I'll never reach it. So it almost doesn't matter when someone says to me, oh, you really embody love, or you're really in integrity. It's like, awesome. I don't really care. Like, where I'm going is over there. And I know, and I don't want to be there tomorrow. I'm not trying to get there tomorrow. So that I found has been healthy, because the masculine part of my mind, and this may be incorrect for some people, but the masculine part of my mind always wants to pretend like it's done, it's complete, and it's finished a thing. And the feminine part of my mind is just like, guess what? There's more. Right. And yeah, balancing that by like letting go of all of it. And then just meeting everything that life has been the most liberating thing. I was talking to a friend today, and he's inviting me into a really deep initiation. And he was telling me where I would need to be and who I would need to be to even do the initiation. And I won't disclose what it is, but he's like the level at which you need to be. And I was sitting there reflecting, and I'm like, wow. Before I even realized that conversation was going to happen today, I was sitting there reflecting on hearing so many of the limitations that people speak about. And I'm like, wow, I understand it. I get it. But I haven't experienced that in 8 years or 6 years or 5 years. And, I think the reason why I'm fascinated by that is that what if the work actually really worked? Because I think sometimes we settle for these watered down versions, and they sort of kind of work. But I'm like, what happens? Kind of did that session with you. It was like, oh, that shit worked. Like, immediately something was different. Immediately, and then, it's been 18 months now. I'm like, it's still, right? And like, so there's this fascination, which I'm sure you share as well. It's like, how do we create things that are the real fucking deal? There's enough noise and extra and fluff and people trying to scale to 6 figures or 7 figures in the world. So it's like, well, what is the antidote? And this is a message to anyone listening and receiving this, is like, the antidote to chasing something, trying to stand out, trying to be the person, trying to scale to this or create this or do that or make the impact, is just become fucking extraordinary. like relentlessly. Here's everything that they say you can do. Here's all the things they say you can usually heal in trauma. Even the highest level practitioners. Here's all the things you say. I'm like, cool. Let's see if I can collapse that. And literally, with ferocity and commitment and devotion, and every single day, it's like chop wood, carry water. It's like I will live to defy the limitations. It's working. So, but again, the beauty is that seeing the people that come through our trainings doing the exact same thing, going, oh, so it's not just me thinking I'm cool. So it's a real thing that we can all adopt and again, come back to the original answer. It's like, decide.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. With one of the primary things that we see with people playing out is, they feel like they've done the work, they've done all of these things, they've ticked the boxes, they've done it all. So they think, but they don't have that deep sense of embodiment of it, and they're really using like all of those spiritual practices just really to spiritually bypass, where they're actually just doing something, but they're not actually deeply connected with it. They might be doing the thing, but as you said, they're doing it to 40% rather than actually going through all of the nuances of actually deeply connecting with themselves and self-facilitating themselves as part of it. So how can people become more aware of where they are playing into those kind of paradigms of just doing the spiritual thing, but you're doing the spiritual thing to actually avoid the actual work?
Are you getting results?
So simple. It's like, show me your bank account. Show me your clients and their results.
Is it real?
Yeah.
Because the whole point of 5D manifestation, all these things, is that it lands in the 3D.
Yeah.
It doesn't stay there. It's like, because the world is moving into an orientation where the planet's going to be in a fifth dimensional state, and not every person will be there, but will be the people that will be in that frequency are the ones that learn to actualize, keyword actualize 5D into 3D, so it's beyond the words. And there's this myth that continues to perpetuate of like, forgive my French, but it's like, I'm magic and things just happen. And I'm like, I feel that, I experience that, but I'm as magic as the conviction that I take the next step with. I'm as magic as that thing I do that's really uncomfortable in my business that I have to do to actually bring through and bring something into form. I'm as magic as that really challenging conversation that I don't want to have. I'm as magic as, putting in the work to create an offer that's actually worth high ticket and can generate a lot of money and actually truly starts to play in the realms of being amongst one of the greatest things that are out there. It's that level. It's not flying off the seat of the pants. It's not just hoping. It's not just saying a couple of things and hoping it works out. It's like, I'm fully here for this, And I think one of the other points, something you mentioned that was really powerful, is like, self-leading, self-facilitating, which is so important. And, being so radically like connected and devoted to honesty, because like it strikes me in the self-development industry, it's like, speak your truth, embody your truth, all these words are said a lot, and I'm like, the framing that I've adopted that's been supportive, because it gives me direct access to the action step, is I'm going to be really honest in every single moment, rather than going, I'm going to speak my truth, because that could feel like I'm speaking my truth in certain moments. Or I'm going to be vulnerable now. Hey guys, I'm on Instagram. I'm going to be vulnerable now. Get ready. It's like, I'm just going to be as honest as I can in every single moment, given it's actually appropriate. Because sometimes, and people could take this the wrong way, and then they start vomiting every single thing that happens throughout every single day, all over every single person. And that becomes really unloving and destructive. But when something is alive and it's interfacing with somebody else and it could have an impact on that person, speak it. When something is present inside yourself and you can see you're obviously not getting the results you want, you're doing all the things and you're hoping and hoping and hoping and hoping and doing all the things, something needs to shift. And the first place is to go, where am I lying to myself? A really good journal prompt. Where am I lying to myself in this life? Because the difference between someone that can manifest at a 5D rate is they're fully engaged in their body. They're fully alive in their body. They're not 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%, 80%. They're fully engaged and fully alive, and they're fully present with every sensation. And that's what actually starts to make it 5D, because you've tapped through all of your physical senses into your sixth sense, and the sixth sense is that bridge that brings you into a fifth dimensional state. And the other little piece that is good information to know is that you've merged your you're starting to, and I don't think any of us are fully there yet right now, but you're starting to merge your will with divine will in a way that you don't. I was talking to a friend this morning and she's like, wow, so many of the decisions in your life aren't even up to you. I'm like, you're right. And I was like, shit, I hadn't thought about it that way. She's like, there's so many things that it's so clear that you're meant to be doing it, and not many people would understand it. And I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. I was just kind of like, so I was like reflecting on it. I'm like, yeah, but your decisions become bigger than self-preference. What you'd like to experience. I'm like, what I'd like to do is go and buy an apartment on the beach in Spain and live all summer all year round, and and then travel to places that I want to go to when I want to. If it was just what I want, I'm like, I would do that. The food stays really good in the season all year round in the south of Spain. Like, they have those really big plump tomatoes that I love. I'm like,
I love how you thought about this so much that you're like, I know exactly where I go. Here it is. And my human is like, spirit human kind of dance going on here.
100%. So it's like, that's what I want. And I'm like, and I would be literally, I would sit with my son, literally just me and him for 2 weeks at a time and do nothing else. Like if it was just about me. And I was, that was the first time I said this morning, I'm like, that's really brilliant. I'm like, that's actually what I really want. I'm like, I would take that over almost everything else. But then Spirit's like, we need you in Australia. And I'm like, it's supposed to be in Austin, Texas. They're like, yeah, but you need it in Australia. I'm like, yeah, my son. I'm like, yeah, but you need it in Australia. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to Australia. And the form that came in is through an experience of being at the airport, flying into Austin with a friend of mine, Yarixa, and about to drop in, had a lot of friends in Austin, and I'm about to have some really good quality time with some good friends, and then, boom, I get pulled up. I didn't have a return flight booked. I was dressed a little bit like a celebrity in some ways. Like I put on this jacket that I bought in Vegas many years ago that I didn't get a chance to wear. So I'm like putting on this jacket and walking to the airport. This is a bit much. I'm like, but fuck it. This is going to be fun. And the guy's just looking at me, the counter. He's just like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I was like half slurring. I've just done 21 days worth of facilitating retreats. I'm like, I just ran some retreats in Mexico. I'm here to see some friends, and then I'm flying out in a couple of days' time. And for some reason, he didn't like that because I'd just been in America for 2 months, doing all kinds of stuff and, meeting people and having conversations and meetings and, exploring a few things. And it was interesting because it was... The way that I experienced it was I had like the typical rhetoric of like the good cop, the bad cop. The good cop was like my best mate. He kind of even felt Australian. I'm like, this guy feels Aussie. I'm like, I feel like he's one of my bros. And then I had this amazing guy, he's the same color skin as me, right? Legendary. I don't know what his culture is, but same color skin as me. And he's just like in full bad cop mode. He's just like, I don't like you. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, okay, great. That's beautiful. And he's like, I'm going to send you back to Mexico. And I'm like, all right, cool. Let's do it. And at that point, I wasn't attached. I wasn't like, I need to do this thing. I'm like, Mexico's great. Like, the first thing you could do. And, the way that I experienced it, again, not making him right or me wrong, any of that stuff, just like the way that I experienced it was he was really hell-bent on getting me deported somewhere and not being in Austin, Texas. And he held such an intense line, and there were so many things that I experienced that were questionable, but I understand that I'm like, okay, and this is the system, and I love America, and I want to live there eventually, but I want to do it the right way, so I'm learning how to respect your rules, and I'm like, okay. So there's all these things present in my field whilst I'm there, and then and this is to my point before, as things are happening, as I'm having conversations, as he's disrupting things in me, because this conversation went on for like 90 minutes, I'm crying. And not crying out of like victim, crying in terms of like, wow, I feel powerless. But like letting the transmission run as it's alive. Not, oh, I need to be strong and present well to the police or whatever. I'm like, there's tears that are here right now. And part of it, I was standing quite strong. Other parts of it, I was a fucking mess. But like, that's what's real. If I'm being honest with how I felt. And then I sat down and I cried for like 10 minutes because I was like, I'm not going to I don't know when I'm going to see my son now. And I'm like, whoa. As I'm going back and forth with him, and then eventually he said, you're going to Australia. And I'm like, great. So now it's an extra 30-something hours of flying before I go see my son. And I'm like, I want to go see him on the 9th or the 12th, whatever. And now you're telling me this, and I'm not going to fly to Australia and then fly directly to England. That would be suicide, right? I'm like, that's too much, even for me. I'm like, okay. So then I'm processing and feeling. And as I'm processing and feeling, this is the thing, it's like the field of energy around you changes when you're actually processing, because then by the end of it, every single person, the men, the women that were working there were like my best friends. And they were leveling like, look, we checked out everything. We've seen every part of your phone. We've interrogated every part of your life. We've seen your entire social media. We've done everything. And the summary is, you're actually a good guy. I'm like, right? And that's how they started treating me. Like, wow, I was like walking, I was laughing. I'm like, oh, I feel like a criminal, because they escorted me onto the plane from Austin to Dallas. And they're like, bro, you are not a criminal. You're the furthest thing from a criminal. You're actually a really good guy. And, and you can feel that everyone likes you. There's like a rapport built, from, experiencing somebody or whatever it is. But that's equal to me going, this feels unfair. It may not be unfair, but emotionally, this feels unfair in my body. I feel powerless. Let me run that energy through my body so that if there is a way that it could shift my timeline, then it will. That's the real time, because as Uncle Joe always says, our emotions are magnetic. Like, that's the most magnetic part of us. And that's checked out across the board. I'm like, yeah, positive and negative. It's not just the, oh my God, I'm abundant. It's the, I have all this shame around this thing and I'm trying to call in this thing, but it's going blah, 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 blah. So yeah.
Yeah. And that's two of the things that most people struggle with feeling the most, is powerless and how unfair things are. That's like two of the things that so many people, that it's just like, as soon as that comes up, it's just like, boom, straight back down, straight into suppression. So it's, how do you frame to people to be able to actually go to those places, especially when there's decades or even generations of suppression of that?
Yeah, one of the things is being able to name that it exists as an emotion, like powerlessness. It's not a thing that you hear that often. I've heard us talk about it, and I've heard some of our friends talk about it, but I don't hear that often framed as an emotion that actually exists. And then the piece that I've always found fascinating is I'm always in the spirit of like, here's how it moves through my body and how I experience it. Here's how my physiology starts to shift. And we also show graphs in our trainings as well, with like how the different emotions show up in the body and physiologically, and then the actual the colors of the sensation through the body. But then as well as that is like, there's an element of bringing somebody into a state where they can remember a time of feeling powerless. It's kind of like you're shamanically descending the energy down, where you felt like this and like that, where you felt like there was nothing you could do. You had no power to do anything. And like you pad it out and you take the definition and you split it, you open it until it has like variations of how they may have experienced it. And if it's an individual person, one-on-one, you're working with them, you would make it really specific based on what they said. If you were talking to them and they'd felt those sensations and the intention was around their relationship, then remember the last time in your relationship where you actually felt powerless, where even though you wanted X to happen, there was nothing. It felt like, keyword, felt like there was nothing you could do, because there's always something you can do. And ironically, sometimes feeling the powerlessness is what unlocks the power. So I personally believe and have witnessed, that something that's very 2016, 17, self-development is like, unleash your power or embody your power, etc., right? And reclaim your power. And sorry to anyone that creates programs around that, but I'm just stating it from where I am. And then there's this piece where, to truly know your power in its full range, in its embodied sense, like through every cell of your body, and to walk as your power, or your embodiment of power, connected to the connection with God or divine or the earth that radiates power through you, is another way of perceiving it, is you have to have met anything inside of you that's a conflict to that power. Any story that believes that I am powerless, because you may have an experience that you're powerless, but doesn't mean you actually are powerless. And often it can be as simple as meeting the emotion, because then someone told me this is in my human design, but then I keep seeing this being true for a lot of people. So according to my human design, if I get stuck and I process an emotion, the idea I'm looking for in my business comes up. It illuminates. But I'm like, that's true for most of my friends though. I'm like, so I'm like, we feel stuck, we feel blocked. And sometimes it is feeling the feeling somatically through the body of, I feel stuck. And then you'll get to maybe the emotions underneath that. And then once you process that, the idea you've been looking for or the epiphany, because it's kind of like marketing and sales, right? And I teach marketing and sales, but I also understand that where we are in the world, social media, with the amount of noise, I'm like, originality is so important. And a true originality is something that, could be unlocked and supported and unlocked for somebody. And, someone could assist them to unlock that. But I'm like, sometimes the coolest shits come from things that I wasn't taught. And then I reverse back for a second and I go, but you have to master the basics in order to have the ability. As Sam always says, she's just like, what a master does is the master bends the rules, but they've embodied the rules. They know the rules. They know what they're playing with. This is familiar territory. And then when they break the rules, it's calculated. It's like, so I'm going to do this. I'm used to experiencing blank, blank, blank when I do this. And I'm curious, if I try this, we might experience blank, blank, blank. But we don't know. It's a very humble thing to do from a place of integrity and integration, more so than integrity. Well, it's kind of the same thing, but integration of like, oh, so I know what I'm doing. I could market a thing and make 100 grand off it, right? I know what I'm doing. Now let's play. Let's see if I can make 200 grand if I do this. You know what I mean? So, and that applies to all things. Like I think about the 10 steps that I teach in NSA. And it's like before someone tries to bring all their magic and their extraordinary gifts and their light language and all these things into the modality, I'm like, first nail these 10 steps so you can produce results like you're getting like nobody's business, just consistent. And then just throw random stuff in there in a calculated way, in a way that makes sense but attuned to the client, not attuned to what you want, which is very important because it's like, well, I feel like I want to do light language in this and I want to prove to myself that it's like, that might not be what I need. So, yeah, so the powerlessness is a thing. What was the other emotion you mentioned before? Do you remember what it was? Powerlessness is...
So there's powerlessness, because that's definitely associated with free states, but then there's also the unfairness, which is associated with morality.
So I just facilitated the deepest experience of my life, and we did Unify. I've done that 4 times in person, then we did Omnify, which is our level 2, and I knew that I was going to receive that transmission as much as everybody else. Like, it was like, it's 14 days. I'm like, I looked at the schedule and I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right, we're going to do it. Okay, that's cool. And it was amazing and everyone was extraordinary. And by day 10, I'm like, yo, y'all are G. I'm like, fucking, you've got this. And on those lands, there's multiple cultures and traditions. So there's the Toltec, Olmec, Mayan, there's the Mexica, and then there's the Aztecs, then there's the Spanish, and there's all these different cultures. There's way more than that, but those are kind of some of the main ones that people identify and understand. And in the Mexica tribe, they say Omateo. And Omateo is basically we honor the dark and light equally. And now when I see it demonstrated by some of the shamans, what I see is they're holding the energetic of that so intently in every single moment. It's not like I think about the Tantra world, and I facilitate stuff myself as well at times. It's like, now we're going to do a dark initiation. But for them, it's like, it's so... It's never been... I don't know if it's never been separated. I'd have to ask them and validate this, so I'm going to share these words. But it looks so integrated. But I'm watching them, I'm like... It's almost like they've forgotten they exist. And it's just life. It's just what is. They've like untethered all the stories, and it's just like we honor the dark and the light equally. Full stop. And so to your point, unfairness. I'm like, it was unfair the way that I was interrogated. And to some degree, based on my understanding of psychology, I was manipulated into saying things so they could validate me not coming. That's my story. It isn't the truth, but it's the way that I experienced it. And that's unfair. And I had to run the energy of unfair. But the way that I perceive reality is there's different ways of interfacing with life. And I'll share it in this way. So I perceive reality because of the work that I do is like, because I'm traveling all the time. So when I'm traveling, I'm like, and I switch into all these modes, right? So there's the tourist, And the tourist is someone that goes and takes photos and go see the nice sights, and they go and see all the pretty things. They'll go to Egypt, take the photos, go with the generic mainstream government-based guide that will guide them through an experience, and they will have a really great time. And it'll be beautiful, amazing family holiday, amazing milestone. It'll be an amazing experience, and that is epic. And I've been that person, and I still switch into that mode sometimes, right? Then you have like the spiritual tourist. They've understand, they research a bit of the ancient philosophy, they know how to meditate, they know how to do the most, not most, but like spiritual practices that give them access to a deeper state of stillness, and they can be present. And they go there, perhaps they're going there to receive the codes, perhaps they're going there to receive something, or to learn something, or to grow something, or to unlock something. And it's a very beautiful intention, right? They're all beautiful intentions. And then you have a grid worker. And a grid worker goes there on a mission. It's nothing to do with you. It's zero. It's like, you want me there? I'm like, okay, what do I have to do? Oh, fuck, are you kidding? All right, cool. Yeah, sweet. And I laugh about the complaining aspect because I very rarely complain, but it's like, it's this joke, so I'll share this story. Different people have different abilities to understand what I'm about to say, so I'll try and articulate it in a way that is accessible, because this isn't words that I hear almost anyone else use. So when we travel around as a grid worker, it's one of the main things that I do, is we go to portals and sacred sites, right? And these are stargates. They're a bridge for heaven on earth. They are these primordial mounds like Mont Segur or Montserrat or, Mount Shasta. These are primordial mounds, meaning the earth actually created them. And then there is these temples that have been built by humans. They could be cathedrals, they could be castles, they could be temples. And then you have ley lines, which have telluric energy moving through them. So there's all these like elements when you're going to sacred sites. And when you go, like if right now me and Cody go, and we've been to Egypt together, and we'll probably do a lot more together in the future, if we go and stand on a ley line, the amount of telluric energy or photonic energy moving through us, it'll upgrade our DNA. Really simple. That amount of light, it will significantly, especially if that ley line's fully open, will upgrade our DNA. It will do that within a couple of minutes, let alone if we go and do a whole ceremony there, right? So that happens. That's a very real thing, and it's now measured by science. It isn't just some kids going woo-woo. And then now, bringing that to like my way of relating to life, people are going to portals. They're going to do, sacred site work, and they're going to see different things, and they're going to receive the codes. I'm not going there for that moment. I'm going there because I've been called there, and half the time I know why I'm going, other half I have no idea. And I get there and I'm like, okay. Now, it's true, and any person that right now that decided to, with a group of friends, stand and sit in a circle with their holding hands and embody the frequency of love, you would create a physical portal, not a physical, but like a metaphysical, portal of love, energetically, and that energy would live there. And to the degree at which you embodied that frequency and knew what you were doing, the stronger the portal would be. I.e., if I taught someone how to create a portal, and then they walked away from it and I walked into it, I would feel the energy I feel love. They wouldn't tell me what it is. I would be like, the feeling that I feel is love, especially if you're attuned, right? But the same is for negative portals. So a negative portal is when someone does the exact same thing, but it's the other side of the spectrum. And a negative portal can be created by 3, 4, 5 people with the same intention. Now, the story I tell often, because it's really accessible, is we go to Chichen Itza, we're doing some grid work there. We recently got the frequency, the energy of Chichen Itza from 200 on the map of consciousness all the way up to 1200. We did that with very tangible tools. And the energy of there now is continuing to shift. And then we did peyote ceremonies there and all kinds of stuff. We had a moment, the first time we were there with a group, and there was 4 or 5 soldiers standing together. And as they're standing together, it kind of felt a little bit obvious what they were talking about. There were some attractive women around them, and I could feel the energy. We were about 50 meters away from them. I looked at the women that were there. I'm like, what do you reckon they're feeling right now? And they're like, power over, objectification, and a few other things that are like masculine to feminine projection, which also could be both ways as well. And I'm like, so would you say that they're standing there and they're in agreement? And they're like, yeah. Okay. Would you say that they're all feeling it? And they're like, yeah. Okay. Would you say that that's acceptable for them to be in that energy, and that feels like the right thing to do? And they're like, yeah. Like, cool. So right now they are creating a portal. of objectification. We don't know exactly. We'd know if we go closer and muscle tested, etc. But objectification, domination, and whatever else, right? And this is us speculating at this point because we're staying quite far away, and maybe we are really sensitive and we can feel it, but that's now a portal that's there. So I'm breaking this down. This is a long answer because I want to get to this point. So people do that unintentionally. They don't realize they're doing it all the time. We could do it when if me and Cody are at his house and we're fighting and we're both feeling anger, in some ways it creates a portal, negative energy, right, of anger. And then someone else might walk in here unknowing and go, why does it feel some kind of way? Or why have I got a headache? Or why have I got this physical ailment? Or why am I feeling this? Or why do I feel angry? It's because you've walked through a portal, a field of energy that is this particular frequency and we're these beings that are pure energy. So it's like our energy merges with it and then boom, it's alive. So sometimes when you're traveling the world and you're going to places and you feel a certain thing and you're having a drink or you're doing a thing, you're actually walking through a negative portal. Your brain goes, oh, I've got a headache, or my stomach feels sick, or I feel like I need to go home, or I'm tired. I'm like, you're not tired. We got to this restaurant in Vlaardid, 20 of us, and two of them, when they were sitting with me, one of them goes, I'm really tired. And I'm like, I didn't say anything, I just paid attention. And she's like, why am I, all of a sudden, I'm really, really tired. And she's a sensitive and quite an attuned being, and, you know, she's kind of learning grid work. And I said to her afterwards, we're walking through the town, and I felt, because I've opened my body to receive this, I felt like knives and swords going through my body. And essentially, I'm feeling the ancient wars that occurred throughout time in that particular area. Because I'm a grid worker, I'm there on a mission. I'm there to restore the original template of that land back to its original form, and maybe add some other new cool shit to it, if that's what I'm guided to by the ancestors. So now I'm having this experience, and it's unfair. I got called to be here, I got called to be in Vlaardid, I'm supposed to be running a retreat, and now I have to go do this thing. And I literally felt like my body felt the impact of 100, 200, 300, 400, 5,000, 2,000, 300, 400. So I felt like some like 2,000 impacts of like things stabbing into me. That's how it felt in my body. And anyone can do this. You just have to go, I'm open to experiencing the reality of what it felt like to be in the war or that experience, and I opened my body to receive it. Now I did that, and I'm teaching grid work, and we're in a city, which is the perfect place to do grid work. And now I'm moving through the city, and I'm feeling all these things, and we go shopping, but we're plugged into the mystic layer of the land. Right? So that basically means that we're now hearing the thread and speaking to the ancestors and hearing way more that's happening in the 3D reality. So the point of me sharing this is that there is a layer of reality in the physical realm where there's this guy that's interrogating me and he wants to send me home. That's the physical layer. That's like the tourist level, right? And I'm perceiving that he's manipulating me, right? Which is a perception, not a truth, perception. And my assessment is that he's manipulating me, and I feel a certain way about it. That feels unfair. On another level, he's doing his job. He's protecting the country that he loves. And I'm a foreigner. Different perspective. Then there's the higher expression. It's like he's doing God's work by sending me here because I'm here to do something in Australia. It could be this podcast, right? It could be seeing my godson, Ocean. It could be spending time with my closest friends because last time I was here, it was very rushed and it was too quick. It could be doing very particular work with the ocean that I've been doing, meaning like the actual ocean, the physical ocean. It could be any manner of things. It could be going to the rites of dance with Mark. It could be any of those things. But as is all humans, are plugged into the higher transmission. So even though they don't know what they're doing, everyone knows what they're doing. They're playing their role, their archetypes, because it's kind of like a simulation or a game. So in some ways, we're kind of always doing God's work. We just don't realize we're doing it. Because without Set, which is the dark god of the Egyptian pantheon, not evil, but dark, there is no Horus. So Set kills Osiris, cuts him into 14 pieces, spreads him over the land. For 80 years, Horus and Set, so he fights with his uncle for 80 years to become the priest king, the king of kings of Egypt. But without that 80 years of resistance from Set, there is no Horus. That's why the Egyptians don't have a word for evil. They don't say that's evil. They're like dark, light, period. Serious. So coming back to this piece, it's like it's unfair, yes. On one level, it's really unfair. But at another level, it's something bigger is happening. So then I'm now in this experience and I am connecting in with the land. I'm like, cool, so what's actually going on here? And this sounds a bit out there for some people, so I'm just going to pre-frame that. But between me and a few other people, we established there was 190,000 negative portals open there over the last 500 years. 190,000. And you think about how many millions of tourists have been there, how many people that live there, how many arguments, how many fights, how many wars, it's a place in to my understanding, at least in Mexico, where they started to stand up for indigenous rights. So a lot has happened in that city. And every time there's been an interaction, whether it was 500 years ago when it was a war, whether it was the Spanish coming in to go to war with them, whether it was a mother and her son having a really, really challenging moment, whether it was someone seeing their dad get murdered in front of them, whether it was two politicians arguing, it doesn't really matter what it is. There's 190,000 of them. And then because to walk around and clear 190,000 portals is a whole thing. So I'm like, now what do I do? Like, what's the core? What is at the center of this thing? Like, what created most of this pain? And some of these, I haven't got the exact dates on some of these pieces that I'm about to share, so I'll pre-frame that. But somewhere between 400 and 500 years, one of the people that were teaching at our event said that it's when they brought Christianity into that particular area of Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula, and they brought through Mother Mary as Lady Guadalupe, which is how they venerate her, and their devotion is really, really beautiful. I love it. And then Jesus, right? But Jesus with the rose, with the thorn crown, and the energetic is love comes with suffering. So now, as a grid worker, the reason why I'm there, it's unfair. I'm running a retreat with all these people of responsibility and da. I'm having to process this for this land, for these ancestors. It's whatever. But I'm running that energy through my body to collapse it on behalf of humanity, because it's not even about me. It's not about you. It's not about the things that we think it is. And that's the way that I feel, talking about courageous leadership and like the next generation is, it so transcends these things that we have been focused on. Part of my reasoning, and I was reflecting on this when I come back to Australia, the Gold Coast, is it feels like my role, and it's really fun, is I come back to like activate everyone and go, boom, let's make that launch the biggest it's ever been. Then I'm out, bye. And then I kind of circle back in and I'm like, how can I help? Can I help you market this thing? Can I help you get people around this? Can we do this thing? Can we make it bigger? Great. Boom, and then I'm out. Then I'm back to America. Then I'm back to the UK. And like I do this dance with Australia where I come here to like amplify my friends and to share all that I'm receiving and give it to my friends, because again, it's like, this is fun. Now we're all doing really well. All of my Aussie friends, I'm like, you guys are killing it. This is epic. Like, you know what I mean? And that's the piece. I had another close friend, which I won't mention his name. He was like thanking me. He's now doing exceptional things, and he was thanking me he realized so much of what he's doing now, it came from what I taught him. And I was like, yeah, the point is not the acknowledging of me. The point is that you're able to do it. Like, that's the point. The point is that you're able to live your purpose. The point is that you're able to serve in the way that's true for you. And I don't feel it's completely true that I've played as big a role as he does. I feel like I really respect and revere his embodiment and just like who he was before he even came into our orbit. It's nice to see the reflection, but again, it transcends that. It's like it's so much bigger than that. It's like that's why we come together and we always like supercharge each other. And it's like, what else can we teach each other so that we can go out and do bigger stuff in the world, And I think that's so important, because like that then transcends whether we're doing 7 figures or whatever that is. It keeps us in that place where we're not quite there yet, and we have this continuous ability to serve each other and support each other to rise. So I could say that having to go into 400K debt during COVID was unfair. Like, the prayers that I laid prior to that was, I want to understand in every fiber of my being what integrity with money is. And God's like, here you go. And I'm like, fuck, like that? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, she's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. But this is a thing for everyone to understand. And this is to the point of like things are unfair, or the idea of complaining is like, whether you're religious or not religious, or you're spiritual, or you set intentions, or you manifest, or you pray, doesn't matter. Same statement goes across the board. Your prayers are always being answered. You're getting exactly what you asked for. It just doesn't come with the beautiful ribbon that you lack. And after overcoming so many of these like huge, what first has felt like at times megalithic things to overcome, it's just like, fuck it. I'm just going to be more limitless, so let's go. You know what I mean? That's what it comes down to, so, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. life gives us the initiation for the things that we're praying for. It doesn't give us,
Yeah.
doesn't just hand it to us. It's like, all right, well, here's all the areas where you're out of alignment with that. Here's all the areas where you're disconnected with that. Here's all the pieces where you're avoiding that and keeping it at arm's length. And the experience that you're sharing is just really a great example of that dance with life. It's our ability to be able to dance with life, to be able to see everything that comes into our experience, into our field, as the next thing scheduled to be loved. It's the next thing that's actually coming into our experience that we actually get to have the initiation into, so that we can actually then evolve both ourselves in relation to the thing that's present for us, but then also evolve the people around us and the world as part of it as well. So
100%.
what do you feel is the catalyst for more people to start to shift into doing more grid work?
Grid work. Ooh, shit. First words that come through is listening. Again, a prayer that I laid in 2021. I'm like, I want to know what it is to truly listen. And I feel like now I'm seeing that come into fruition. It's not for everyone. And I have a little personal intention. It's like, I want to see 10,000 like initiated grid workers. Because I think there's an understanding that I have, and again, come back to like the kind of like the Instagram version of something and then the real version of something, and sometimes if I explain to someone what a grid worker is, they'll be like, I'm a grid worker, and I'm like, it's not that you're not. I'm like, it's just that there's certain pieces that are really important to understand if you're saying those words, because every time we say something, those words have weight. And, if I go around prancing and saying something that I'm not, that I don't fully understand, it, life will do what life does. It will serve you, So there's an understanding there of like, it gets to come from someone that's so much greater than you. Otherwise, it's not grid work. You're just going to receive codes, which is not grid work. That's not what a grid worker does, at least from the way that I understand it. Because from the ancient traditions, the ancient word for it is geomancy, or I'm a geomancer, which is earth divination. And earth divination it translates to, if I think about like a divination tool, like a tarot cards or runes, or, the I Ching or something like that. Like, this is divination. You're looking at it to see the unseen. And then within that, then there's something we're meant to do with it. It's not just like nice information to receive the codes and then go back and then whatever. It's like there's a function. There's something that's bigger than me calling myself Horus on Instagram. You know what I mean? It's like there's a meaning behind it, and it doesn't come from this fleeting place of, because I've been in 2019. I've been through that to Egypt, and I went through that initiation of like going there for myself, which is, again, it's not wrong. I went there as a spiritual tourist, and I received the codes. What people don't tell you, what is not understood, is you also sometimes receive a whole bit of other shit that's really dark, because a lot of dark spirits and entities can be at these places. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can come back with things that you think is something, and they're something totally different. And then you're running a narrative on social media, and you're thinking, and I've done this, right? You're running this narrative on social media. You're thinking you're knowing what you're talking about, and it's something else that's working through that has a different agenda to you. And then they're using you because you know how to cloak it in a very, very beautiful, tasteful language that everyone's going to receive it, and you have respect, and you have these things. So there's an understanding of what we're actually doing. It's not just like a kind of thing that we just do just because. It's like, yeah, there's deep intention. I mean, I think about the majesty in which some of these beings held, something that Queen Isis did. One of my mentors, Marguerite, says, she's like, there's like, everyone talks about bringing heaven to earth, and she's like, and then there are beings that bring earth to heaven, which is a totally different context. It's like, I'm gonna stand here and elevate this place, truly, not in these whimsical kind of like intangible, new age ways, but like, it's like you're a student to how do I learn, how do I let the earth, because the earth has been one of my greatest teachers. It's like, how do you want me to ask you permission to connect with you? Like, how do I do that? Like, what is actually in accordance? I can see what the Mayans did. I can see what the Hindus did. I can see what the Egyptians and the Celts did. I'm like, and what are you asking me to do? Not this is right, this is wrong. Like, what are you asking me to do? And how do I hear you and lead through that, So It's got some, the number one rule of grid work, it's funny because everything else we do has such depth to it, and it's so like, 3.5 hour breathwork journeys and ceremonies, right? And then when we switch modes, it's like, what's the first rule of grid work? Like, have a really good time. But I say that to them because they're all deep in their body and they've been in deep transmission. They're not just someone that, pulled the idea out of hearing it from a podcast. You know what I mean? It's like these are people that have chosen in to like, okay, I want to walk this path. It's not just something that I'm going to put on my social media. Like I understand what that actually means. It's kind of like saying I love you to the earth in a really, really meaningful way. It's like marrying the earth because a grid worker sees the earth's body as their body. That's a big thing to say. It's like it sounds really good and it feels really spiritual when you say, oh, the earth's body is my body. But it's like that means when she's in pain, you're in pain. You're feeling that shit. You're running it through your body. Like that's what you're actually saying. It sounds really fucking beautiful and honorable, but it's like there's a reality to what that actually means. Like what it actually means to do something and to, so someone wanting to become a grid worker, I'm like, sit with if it's actually your path. Because if you're really listening, you'll be doing shit that doesn't make any fucking sense to anyone else around you. Like even the stuff I just explained to you guys before, I'm like, I'm sure some people are like, what the fuck did you say? I do my best to break it down as accessible as possible so that everyone can understand it. But it's a real thing. And like feeling myself getting stabbed maybe 2,000 times or more, that's a real feeling. It's like the sensation, like I want to know what it feels like to be in that war so that when I'm actually clearing this, I'm actually bringing into reconciliation. And that's a hell of a decision to make, so, yeah. And it's also the most fun thing that I do. I'm like, literally, because like to make it lighter for a second, it's like if I put on some really great music or we start to sing and we start to dance to like even the most mainstream music and we activate the frequency of joy and love and laughter, what we've also seen happen is like we'll activate a portal through play, through joy, through innocence. And then we'll see other people, we watch them come to where we were and they'll just switch into that same energy like, look at that, guys, we did it. And the last piece I'll share on the grid worker piece is that, you leave everywhere you go better than when you got there. And not just physically. You perceive that the earth has an emotional plane, an astral plane, a mental plane. And you want to leave that place better than when you got there. So how that looks in a really 3D way is we went to this retreat center to facilitate the first unifier in February. And then the prayer, very intentionally that I laid after speaking to the general manager who had just come into his leadership, I said, how can we support you? Like, how can we help this place to thrive? I mean, we loved being here. We had a great time. You guys did a great job. How can we serve you? And he shared some of the different nuances and things that were happening and where the owners would like it to be. And I'm like, done. Let's do it. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, don't worry. So then, in all of our experiences and ceremonies, layered into that is their prayer, their desires, their yearnings is now part of our transmission. It's not separate from it. And then we go back there in November, and then boom, all the things that they wanted to happen, it's done. And it doesn't negate the work that they put in because they are an extraordinary team. But we all know what it's like when you're supported energetically by forces that are, and that's one of our gifts is like we are these bridges for heaven and earth or earth to heaven. Like we are here to be that true people that are attuned and refined in our ability to do that. So it's like when we're praying, it's like, it's not just, it's not a loose thing. It's like this is like years of devotion and stacking of all these different sacred sites and all the energies that we've received now pouring into this prayer. So I'm not surprised that, went to this cenote close to Chichen Itza. It's called Sukan. Sukan is actually the name of the protected dragon in Chichen Itza and in that area for the cenotes. And Sukan, we got there, me and Ray, and this was in November last year, and it was dead. And it was November 7th, and it was dead quiet. And there was 0 people there. Beautiful establishment, no one in there. Dead, ghost town. And we went there because we want to go for a swim. I'm like, I just want to go for a swim. We've been to Chichen Itza, let's go for a swim. And I get in there, and then all of a sudden I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what are you feeling? She's like, I'm not getting in that water. I'm like, neither am I. And then as we kind of sat down and we looked at the water, we sat back and we started to open up the energetics of the space, and then this big, angry black dragon comes out of the water. Now, for those that can see, you'll know what I mean. It's like this big dragon kind of popped out of the water. And I was scared. I was like, okay, that's a really fucking big dragon. I don't know who that is. I'm like, what the fuck? Right. So I was a little bit scared. I'm like, okay. And then out of nowhere, one of my dragon allies kind of stepped forward and didn't fight with the dragon, just kind of came into coherence with it so that it had space held. And as that occurred, we then went into prayer and ceremony and all these different things. And we sang to the water, we sang to the dragon, we apologized for the pain that it experienced in its life. And then we go back there, and I remember this moment. We'd just been to the section of Chichen Itza that's usually closed to the public. We went in there, and I'm like, guys, we get to go to a cenote, and we have 3 options. And I told them the story of Tsukan, and they're like, we're going there. And I'm like, okay. And I was nervous. I was like, okay, I don't know if that, because we didn't go there with the intention to do that work, but we ended up doing the work. How much did we restore it? How happy or angry is that dragon? And I've got the responsibility of like 17, 18, 19 people with me. So I'm like, but we're grid workers. So we're like, we're going there. So we went there, and I got one of them to test where was the, in accordance with the energy of that particular cenote at its original frequency, original template, it was at 9%. And then after the work that I did with Ray, it was at 56%. And then we did some work together, and it got all the way to 100%, so back to its original expression of radiance and light and purity and its original intention. And then inside of that, there was 200 people in that cenote. 200. And I spoke to the guy, to Bell, who's been living in Chichen Itza his whole life, and I'm like, let me just get this straight. Because I was telling him the story of the black dragon. He's like, yeah, that's Tsukan. I'm like, okay, so that's Tsukan. So I'm not just making shit up. Great. It's actually a mythical creature or a part of their lineage. And I'm like, am I right in saying this place has been quiet for a very long time? He's like, yeah, it's been quiet for a very, 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 very long time. I'm like, what now? He's like, well, what you're doing is working. I'm like, okay, great. So I'm like, I'm not just some guy making up some shit that sounds really good for whatever. So like that piece, come back to what we were talking about originally, is like so many grid workers have no fucking idea what they're, so many grid workers have no idea what they're doing. And I'm really here for this next generation of like leadership, where it's like this stuff is being, it's almost like this is my relationship to the Father, right? The Father energy, which we're both in this portal at the moment. And I would say that I'm at the beginning of that journey. I don't feel like I'm embodied in the Father personally. Again, my standards are all the way out there. But I'm like, the Father does whatever it takes. He doesn't really talk about a lot. He doesn't need to please anyone. He's like, this is where I'm going. You can come or not. I don't really care. This thing's getting done. And if you want to come, jump on board. If not, sweet. It's going to be happening anyway. It's going to be done, complete. Right?
This reminds me of just like Lino energy. I'm just
like,
you coming? Let's go. I'm going anyway.
Yeah. And there's no emotions whether you're coming or not. It's like, it's just like, it's where we're going. So yeah, I love it. He's such a beautiful archetype. I would say he really embodies the Father in a beautiful way.
Yeah. Cool. I think that's the perfect thing to begin to wrap up on. What's the best way for people to be able to get in contact with you?
I would say probably Instagram is the best. I mean, I'm not huge on socials. I see with my friends that have got like 100,000, 1 million followers, and they're like, bro, you're next level. What the fuck are you doing? I'm like, it's probably laziness. I'm like, because I'm really good at doing a lot of the things. I'm not good at social media strategy, but I'm really good at like delivering a message.
Yeah.
Instagram is probably the best place, I would say. On there, you'll see the link tree to all the different things that we're doing, and you can apply. A lot of our stuff are by application, and then by true application. It's not just like apply, but I'm going to pitch you. It's like, no, it's actually application. So that's kind of the nature of how a lot of our stuff is. And we do things like Unify, which is a level 1 training where you teach breathwork, grid work, and neurosomatic attunement. And then we have level 2, which is literally by invite only. And then we do things like Egypt, so prophecy is the next thing that we're doing. And that's for like people that are really building the future. It's like, and here's all the evidence. It's like, it's done, So a lot of people that are coming, people that are doing big stuff like buying rockets from Elon Musk and running 9-figure organizations, and like people that are doing really real things in the world. That's kind of like the vibe for like what we're doing with Egypt, So all of those things are application.
Yeah, epic. Thank you so much for bringing your wisdom today. Always love getting to drop in wherever and whenever we get to drop in throughout the world. Egypt, Bali, Estonia, wherever it is.
So. Everywhere. Yeah, so good.
Epic. So thank you for today's episode. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.